And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Phil Brown. Welcome to ITDI, and I'm delighted to be joined here by Stephen Herder and our special guest, Dorothy Zemach, who will be talking to you about should you self-publish.
Thank you, Phil. Good to see you. How's things in Qatar early in the morning?
Pretty hot already, 30 plus degrees at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. But thankfully we can stay cool enough where we are. And,
well, we're truly international tonight, or it's was it Friday evening, Dorothy?
Yes, so coming up on, or is now 8 p.m. in the evening Friday. You're already in the future on Saturday, right?
We're lunchtime. It's noon, high noon here in Japan. So it's truly a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, as we always say. We'd like to welcome everybody to this special event with Dorothy called Should You Self-Publish? This is one of our regular ITD live events on Facebook. And in a little while, we may have a chance to invite people to come in to our little Zoom room here and carry on the conversation. Dorothy, we ran out of time just before. I had this inspiration to look and see if we can figure out how many of these courses you've done with us. Do you have any idea or not?
4 or 5, I want to say.
I'm going to say 5 or 6. I think this is
5 or 6, really?
7.
Okay, it could be, and it keeps. This is.
Is it?
Bill? I think this is the 7th year, actually.
No way, really? Oh, that's excellent. This is our 2nd year going 5 weeks instead of 4 weeks, as I just found that I had more and more to say all the time. So thanks to IDTI for letting me have an extra week so that we can get more done. Yeah.
So just to get, I mean, anybody who's in our room here knows you probably already, but you're the founder, the chief cook and bottle washer of Ways Goose Press. You, how many years ago did you start up Ways Goose?
So that was 2012. I remember that. So that's over a decade now. Of
wow.
And you know, there were certainly people self-publishing before me, but I came on in early years and have been riding the waves ever since.
I told you beforehand I had a couple of questions to ask you, and I'm going to jump to that one right now. In that I follow you on Facebook, and we have interaction every year, and it's fun to watch your business grow. But you seem to be extra busy this year, and I'm wondering, does that reflect any kind of uptick in self-publishing, or tell us a little bit about what dozen or so projects you have going on right now?
Well, I mean, self-publishing is one of the things I do. I also do teacher training. I do consulting. I write. I edit. So, I mean, some of my busyness doesn't all come from one place. But I would say when I think back at 11 years of self-publishing, I think we have seen sort of a rise and perhaps a crest on the wave and evening out a bit more. I mean, there was a time in the early years, I used to liken it to sort of the Wild West of there were no rules and people would throw anything up, and some things became wildly popular and you never knew why. But as more people have begun self-publishing themselves, I think there's more of a need to have really high quality targeted materials out there, and it's not quite true anymore that if you throw anything up, you'll inevitably get sales for no reason. So which I think is good news for serious writers, and is certainly good news for serious readers and teachers. And there's more confidence that when you buy something self-published, it will still be of good quality. So you're not doing only ELT stuff. You're doing fiction. No, I have fiction and nonfiction as well. And actually, when I first started self-publishing, I thought, I'm not going to do ELT stuff because I already have publishers I like, and I'm just going to find those forgotten works of fiction that should see the light of day. I'm going to bring them to light, and it will just be a labor of love. And inevitably, I found, just because ELT is my field and is my passion, I would want to do something. I'd want to make a book, and that's where I'm active. It's where people know me, and at a certain point, making more money off the ESL books than I am off the really good fiction. So I still do both. I mean, I'm still going to continue to do both, but you know, the education stuff has sort of come up to the top. So
yeah. The other question that I had asked you about was I haven't been out of, I'm in Japan. I haven't been out of Japan since before COVID, but I noticed you went off to IATEFL this year.
This year and last year.
Oh, wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so can you give us a bit of the pulse of being back in the face-to-face game? How was that for you?
I really missed it, and I'm glad to be back. And my little self-publisher outfit now has a relationship with the Bournemouth English Book Center. So I just need to bring one example of every book. I send people over there to buy them and to stock them. So one myth that comes up is that booksellers won't pay any attention to self-published books. Certainly not true in our industry. Because I do have relationships with distributors in various countries, and you know, which you can build up over the years. I think people are glad to be back. Honestly, the stranger experience for me, since you mentioned Japan, was JALT last year, which it was hybrid, but I went live, and there were people who looked like they had not really been out of the house in 2 years. Perhaps. And there was a little bit of kind of like, oh, should we touch elbows? And people were masked, even alone in a rice field with the wind blowing. And that was different for me. And I was like, oh, do you know that the rest of the world's not really doing that anymore? But he was like, okay. Every country makes its own policies. And I think it's important also to think about that in terms of students. It's like, I mean, if teachers are a bit rough around the edges for not having been out in 2 years, so are students. And we certainly feel that in the United States, where I'm from, is that students are behind in skills because classes didn't move as fast. They're not used to group work and all those kinds of things that we want to do in our classes. And those are things to take into consideration, and just remind everybody, be kind going forward, be kind with your students.
That's right. You remind me too, when we interviewed you during the pandemic, when you're still running this course as well.
Yeah.
One of the things you were talking about was a lot of people had come into self-publishing, being keen to publish about, emergency remote teaching and so on. And that was kind of quite a notable thing. Now, of course, you've got kind of a lot of books coming out, people publishing about ChatGPT.
Absolutely. But I think one thing that the pandemic did that was very positive for ESL teachers, if I can say that, is it opened the world to working online. Yes. So if you are sitting in Germany or you are sitting in Argentina, you can have students anywhere. And we're all better used to teaching online. Students are better used to learning online. And, some people self-publish materials to sell them on storefronts like Google Play and Amazon and Apple. But you could also make your own targeted ebook or self-published book and just make that a benefit for your own students. If you were a private teacher and you said, hey, if you sign up with me for X number of months, you get this dedicated book not available for sale anywhere else, or if you could package up your class notes and make them available in a reader-friendly format. I mean, I think self-publishing is more than just selling your books at a store. I mean, you could use it for your own teaching business as well.
Yes. Speaking of which, actually, the first time I was interested in finding out about self-publishing was way back when, maybe 15 years ago, at an Association for Language Teaching International Conference, JALT, which you just mentioned. And I attended like a forum for material writers. And interestingly, a lot of the people there were trying to do exactly that. They'd been teaching a course either privately or at a university for many years. They developed these materials, and they were finding, they're just photocopying year after year after year. So somebody said, why don't you just publish it as a book that your students can buy and so on. That was the conversation then. Okay, I'm going to drop
and it's the conversation now.
Right, yes, it still is. I'm going to drop into the background, and just before I do so, I'd like to just say to anybody who's here in the live stream, then please put your comments and questions in the chat below. say hi, let us know where you're from. And also, if you have questions and you're watching the recording, then you can also put those questions in and we'll get back to you as well.
And I'm just going to tell you, Phil, that I'm not able to get into the Facebook Live on my secondary device. So if you're able to drop any chat questions into the Zoom chat, I'll pick them up there for sure.
I will. Okay.
Thank you very much.
And I will let one of these beautiful assistants help me with the questions. So
yeah. I just wanted to say one last thing on that last comment about being kind to students. I've been really trying to find that balance as well. I'm normally kind to students.
Well, there's no year when you should be mean to students.
Yeah,
I don't know that,
but what I was saying was that there's kind of a bit of a push and a pull on this, as I find myself with third-year students who have never really seen what campus life can be like. You know, they've been off campus for 2 whole years. So I'm trying to tell them it's that balance of, hey, ladies, this can be a lot more exciting than simply getting yourself to school. And for some of them, that's all the room they have. But it really is a gentle push and pull.
It's
been very interesting.
They might come in behind, but ideally they would not leave behind.
Exactly.
So how do you get them there?
Yeah. So as far as getting to the point of our little time together here, what can you give the audience just a little overview of what you'd like to talk about, and then we'll go into it, and I'll jump in when appropriate.
Okay. Well, I mean, the title of this is "Should You Self-Publish?" To which, spoiler alert, my answer is yes or no, depending on what your materials are and what your goals are. So I want to talk about what kinds of materials are good for self-publishing versus going with a traditional publisher or not publishing. And then should you personally embark upon that, just because you can, should you? And what are some of the things involved in self-publishing? Because it is more than just throwing a Word document at Amazon. What are some of the different things that you should consider?
Okay, that sounds perfect for the audience. Take it away.
Okay, so I do also publish books with traditional publishers. I have course books with Macmillan. I have skills books with Macmillan, Oxford, Cambridge, University of Michigan Press, Pearson, Express, probably forgetting somebody, but so I do still have current projects with publishers, and I am still intending to continue working with publishers, but I publish different things. So if I want to do a course book, right, which has listening and testing components and heavy art, perhaps videos, those kinds of sort of huge, expensive pieces and very complex layouts and, 4-color, which makes your print book more expensive. I'm not going to self-publish something like that. Also, a course book, I don't know if people realize how many writers it takes and how much staff. If I'm a series consultant on Macmillan's Skillful, which is 2 strands of 5 books each. So that's 2 authors per book, student book, 1 or 2 authors per workbook, an author for the teacher book, 1 to 3 editors at any one stage per book of all of those pieces. And then somebody's doing the LMS platform. Then you've got people in the marketing department. It's a huge operation. I'm not going to take that on myself. I'm not going to warehouse 25,000 books in my garage.
Right.
But there are smaller books and projects that are easier to deal with that increasingly large publishers don't want because they don't bring in as much money. And I think people maybe don't realize how close publishers' margins are. I mean, they're not hugely wealthy. So 1 or 2 books can lose money if other books are bringing in money, but they don't want 30 books that are losing money or 100 books that are losing money. So as an example of one of the very first things I self-published is this little essay book, Answers May Vary. And it's, I don't know if you can read the column, it says collected columns from TESOL's Essential Teacher magazine. So TESOL had this magazine. I wrote a quarterly column for it. It was kind of pre-digital, so it did not exist in any digital format. And then as things happen, administrations change and people change and whatnot, and they discontinued that magazine. So I'd written all these articles, and sometimes I wanted to give one to somebody.
Yeah.
But I couldn't because I didn't have them. I mean, except as an unedited Microsoft Word document. So I wrote to TESOL and said, hey, would you mind, because they had the copyright to my material. I said, would you mind if I took my columns and put them in a book and published them for money? And they said, no, go ahead. We're not doing anything with them. So I just took those columns, put them in a book, put a cover on it, and it exists as an ebook, which obviously I can't show you, and a paperback, and out it went. The second time I did sort of a book 2 of more, again, essays I'd already written. Some of these were published in the think tank for Japan, some of them on Betty Azar's site, which
Right.
a lovely site, but it came down when she retired. And I had all these essays, and so this time I went through and I added reflection questions after each of them. And I thought, oh, we could add a little something to this and make it a bit more teachery. And so I made it a better book and did it again. And so they don't sell enormously well. I'm not getting rich on these, but they exist.
Yeah.
And when I go to conferences or I do school visits or something, I can hand one to the director of the English department, sort of like a personal gift, because
Sure.
it's stuff that I wrote. And if there's 1 or 2 essays in there that I think would be useful for someone to read, I've got, a bunch of essays on teacher burnout, and sometimes those are appropriate for friends of mine. I can give them the book and I can gift them the ebook. And that's really nice. And it's just text. I have a few illustrations in there. I have some screenshots from my computer. I have some photos I took with my own camera that I put in there, but there's no audio, there's no dancing, it's just a book.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing works really well.
And it keeps you on their radar in one sense.
Yeah.
It's a lovely gift, and they're aware of you, and it keeps coming back.
Yeah, I bring them to conferences and give them to raffles if I'm speaking or whatnot. And I know probably more in the world of fiction, but I've had this question in ESL too, is like, do my regular publishers mind that I'm self-publishing? No, not at all. There's no way Oxford University Press wants to republish my 15 old essays.
Right.
That's not going to be a huge seller for them. They're not going to invest editorial time on that. But it is, in their view, a kind of marketing that I do. It does, as you say, keeps my name out there. I'm interacting with teachers. I'm sharing my knowledge. They're thrilled that I'm doing marketing stuff on the side. And it's not competition at all.
Right.
So it just makes me a more active person in the field, and they have no objections to that at all. Let me think about some other books that I have done. So this was another early one that I did with a friend in Japan. It's kind of like a long joke, English for Scammers. It's actually a real textbook, and I have taught out of it on business email writing, but all the examples are examples of what not to do that come unchanged from my spam folder. So you see a spam email, you laugh at it because it's funny, because something is wrong, the grammar or the salutation. You pick apart why it's wrong, and then you learn what is correct. And there's sort of a final exam where you have to rewrite some scammer's email as something a bit more appropriate. So it's just fun. Yeah. I thought that might be more popular than it was. I know a few people who have bought one and said, "Oh, that's a good joke," but I'm happy that I got to write it. It was such a pleasure to write, just to create something. And if it makes money, that's great. If it doesn't make money, I don't care. All I'm investing is my time.
Yeah. Sometimes we do it for ourselves, huh?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. When I got into writing graded readers, which I have done a number of, I have some adaptations of classics. I was looking for some specific stories that I wanted to use for teacher training in Algeria with inspectors. So their English level is high, but they don't have a lot of materials easily available there. And I wanted I mean, they're inspectors who work with high school teachers and high school students, and it's not an extensive reading culture.
Right.
So I thought, how do you sort of sell reading to people who don't necessarily read a lot, even in Arabic or French? How do you make them love reading? And I thought, well, we have to start with super high interest stories. So I thought back, what set me on fire in high school? What made my son excited, as a reader? And I looked for those stories, and they're public domain, but in the original, they were super hard. I thought, okay, that's no good. I'll just get an adapted version. And I couldn't find adapted versions that I liked. They either took out the heart of the story, or they were too simple. I mean, they just weren't right for my purposes. But in my mind, I already had this training program fleshed out that depended on these stories. So I thought, well, fine, I'll adapt them myself. So I used them with my audience in Algeria, and then they went well. And then I thought, well, I've already done the work. Why do I not publish these stories for other people as well? And so that brought me into Graded Readers.
Yeah.
At a certain point, I did begin publishing other people. This is the story of probably my best-selling book, 100 TESOL Activities for Teachers. Somebody contacted me by email and said he was teaching a MOOC, one of these big online classes on this subject. It was a TESOL certificate course through his university. And he had 192 Peruvian teachers showing up in person to Arizona, sent by the US State Department. He had his whole course planned out. He had all his materials mapped out. He's ready to go. And his university says to him, oh, you can't use your own materials. You have to use a real book. And he's thinking, but you don't understand. I've planned out a 6-week course. There is no book that thinks like I do. And so his university basically said, if all your materials existed as a book, then you could use it. So he came to me and said, can you make my materials exist as a book? We have a month. Wow. And I said, well, at a month, I can proofread you. I'm not going to do a really take you apart edit, but also his materials look really good. So I wasn't that worried about it. And he said, well, I can guarantee you 192 sales from 192 Peruvians. I said, okay, but good enough. Put it out, and that it just took off. I mean, other people found it, and we're cheaper than a similar textbook from a larger publisher, and that's still my bestseller to this day. And he just wanted his own materials, but that's the kind of teacher I like working with. And I would say the kind of teacher who makes a good author for self-published materials is someone who's currently teaching, who knows their materials work because they're using them all the time.
Right.
So if you're thinking, should I self-publish my materials? The first question to ask is, well, do they work? And do they work not just for you, but do they work for other people? Because of course, if you're going to sell your work, your audience is people you have not met. It's not even the teacher down the hall who can say, well, how does this work? And you go and explain it to them, right? It's somebody you will never meet. Can an utter stranger pick up your book and make it work?
Right.
So if you have that kind of material, and if you can't find it anywhere else, I had a woman come to me with materials for adult emergent readers. So she works with adult refugees, but who are starting really with learning the alphabet, with learning how to write an A, B, C. And she showed me her worksheets, and I said, yeah, those look good. But there's probably a ton of that out there already. And she sort of sighed and she said, if this material existed, I wouldn't have had to make it.
Right.
I had to make this for my class because there was nothing out there for adults at this level. Stuff for kids, but I want stuff for adults with adult situations. And I said, oh, okay. So this is probably the book that gets ordered the most by universities from me now. I get, I can tell already June, July, we're beginning to see, 100 orders on yesterday and 50 tomorrow of colleges and universities buying this book for upcoming fall classes.
Yeah.
So so that's filling a need, right? It's not out there already, you know how to do it. And if you want that kind of book, it's quite likely that somebody else will too. Right, unless you're really the only teacher teaching what you do.
I've got a couple of questions coming in here.
Sure,
I'm
sure,
wondering, they're somewhat on target, a little off target, but should I wait till the end or just fire them at you as they come in?
Hold them till the end in case I get to their question organically, but you know, obviously don't lose them. Another thing I do is assist a friend of mine who is actually my fiction editor now, Maggie Sokolik, with some of the UC Berkeley MOOCs through edX. And there are MOOCs that do charge money now, but she and I also both believe very strongly that a MOOC should be at its core free.
Yeah.
So, but of all the material that exists in a MOOC, you could arrange it into a book and make it available for convenience. So for students who don't want to spend any money or who can't spend any money, all the material is still there on the course site. But if you wanted to arrange it into a handy workbook, this is one of the courses she teaches on writing for social justice. And it's you know, it's a workbook with writing prompts and spaces. So we can make books like that available for convenience. Yeah. And when I spoke earlier about teachers wanting to maybe make books just for their own classes or their own students, and even if it's something you could sell, maybe you'd want to keep it just for your class so that you can offer your students something that they can't get anywhere else, right? It makes you look a little special. So I did some of the first books I did with other people, I actually did with some teachers whose job description changed out from under them. So they were university instructors who had just been teaching classes, and suddenly they were hit with a requirement to publish. And as one of my friends said, she said, what are the chances in the next 5 months that I will identify a research area, carry out the research, find something of significance, write it up, submit it, have it accepted, and published? I can't do that in 5 months.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I can make something be a book in a weekend. And she said, but I don't do anything. All I do is teach. And I said, but teaching is a thing. How about a book on how to teach or a book on how to learn? So we took another person who was in a similar position, and we drove out to the coast, holed ourselves up in a little rental apartment, and by the end of the weekend, we had 3 books, 2 on how to learn for students, and 1 on how to teach for teachers. And we just divided them by skill area: 50 ways to practice reading, writing, listening, speaking, and 50 ways to teach reading, writing, listening, speaking. And we didn't care if they sold. It was just to give them a publication so they could keep their jobs. But they did begin selling and selling and selling. And we did them first as only ebooks because they were short. And actually for 10 years, I kept those student ones super short, and people kept asking for paperbacks. And I finally doubled their length and made paperbacks. We made them with serious covers at first. I don't know if you can see this. It has kind of a wacky cat on it. The real cover has like a can of pencils or something. And then we thought we would do these clever conference editions and put them in raffles. And everyone liked the cat pictures so much better that, you know what, we're going to change all of them to crazy cats now. So all the student books are going to have strange cats on them, and that will make us different from other people out there. Because as a self-publisher, you can change your covers at any time, the same way you can update your insides at any time. So that's the kind of materials that work well for self-publishing: straight text, reading books, explanations, essays, workbooks, grammar explanations, et cetera, et cetera. To be the kind of person who wants to self-publish, I think you have to sit down with yourself and ask yourself, do I want to run a small business?
Okay.
Because suddenly you are. If you're going to offer your materials for sale and get money, then you might need some kind of different tax structure depending on the country that you live in. I am a corporation. I have a business checking account. All the money goes into the business account. Expenses come out of the business account. I have to pay quarterly taxes. And I mean, there are implications to being a small business that some people don't feel confident taking on.
Right.
I think your initial investment costs are low, but they're not nothing. You will probably have to purchase a cover image. I mean, we didn't draw this. That's a cover image that was purchased. This is not my cat, right? We bought that photo. I paid for the font. So there are some costs there. Beyond just the self-publishing, there's the publishing. So self-publishing means that all of the things that a publisher traditionally takes care of, including editing and book design and cover design, you need to pay for. And I think English teachers sometimes overestimate their own ability to self-edit.
Yeah.
I mean, I work as an editor. I was an in-house senior development editor for Cambridge University Press. I still edit for the big publications. When I do my own books, I hire somebody else to edit me. It
Absolutely.
is super hard to objectively edit yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some editors, especially if you submit very clean manuscript, can sort of edit and proofread together. Some can't. So you might need a proofreader as a separate step. But I think you absolutely need an editor. I think most people could do with hiring a cover designer, unless you know that you have strong design skills. I'm very good at looking at something and saying, no, that's not quite right. I want something else. But
Yeah.
bringing that initial vision to it, that is not me. I know a good cover when I see one, but that is not the same as being able to create one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you need to be willing to spend that kind of money to have a good product. Once you offer something for sale, you are telling people, I believe in this work so much that I believe you should give me money for it. And that is a promise to your consumer. Let's have some of those questions. What have you got?
I got here one from Joel, and he's sounds like he's interested in publishing something. He's saying, if you have names of any companies that might help publishing non-academic publications, that would be helpful. How do you begin to find a publisher in that sense?
Well, a publisher is separate. There have sprung up, of course, plenty of companies that will make your manuscript into a book. I would suggest checking with the website Writer Beware before hiring any of those companies. There's very little a company can do for you that you can't do for yourself or hire individuals to do for you. So I see people, I had an author who came to me and who wanted me to edit him, and then he was going to go through some company that was going to charge him some kind of crazy amount of money, like $15,000 to make his book. And I'm thinking, well, your main expense should be me. Once you're done with that, a couple $100 for a good cover and the rest is free. Why would you give anybody $15,000? And it's just, I couldn't talk him out of it, and he had the money, so okay. But if you want an editor for your book, literally the same people who edit for the big publishers, a lot of us are freelance, are available for you to hire. Cover designers are everywhere. You can buy pre-made covers. You can work with somebody who will design something, whether it's fiction or ELT. If you find an actual publisher who's going to charge you nothing and then pay you royalties, then that's fine. And there are plenty of small presses that are probably easier to approach than HarperCollins. But absent that, I don't know that I'd recommend a book services company. I'd recommend learning how to do it yourself.
I mean, I was just going to jump in and say that we're heading into our possibly 7th edition of your ITDI course on self-publishing.
Yeah.
And for, I don't even remember the price right now, but it's under
$169.
Yeah, $169.
Yeah.
Yeah, for $169 to go in 5 weeks and get all the kind of inside scoops, and you pretty much hold everybody's hand week by
Yeah.
week in going.
And you'll
step
learn how
by
to
step.
format your own manuscript.
Yeah,
And
and you go back, and it's just like you give us so much information. I know lots of people said, yeah, I've watched week 2 3 times now, just going step by step,
it's a
because
lot. It's a
yeah.
pretty dense course.
Yeah,
Okay?
but that's great. No, it's great because it's there and you've got the recording. It's somebody just, just walking you through it all. So it seems like that's a really good. There's a follow-up question here that is kind of asking this. If I'm a first timer and I don't know if I have the resources to self-publish and I'm concerned about not doing a good job, would it be better to find a publisher?
Possibly. I mean, the reasons to find a publisher, I mean, one is if it's the kind of book that only a publisher can handle. Absolutely, they are supposed to do all the work. That's why you get 10% royalties if you're lucky. There are ELT publishers now who will give you a small fee instead of royalties at all. But there are still Publisher Express and Perceptia, for example, are two examples of publishers who still pay royalties. They take the lion's share of the profits because they're doing the lion's share of the work. And they also have international sales teams, which is something that I do not have.
Right.
So
right.
there are people who have perfectly good books that would do very well with a traditional publisher, and they just kind of can't break in. They haven't made the connections. I mean, publishers do their publishing plans 5 years out.
Right.
If they're not looking for what you bring to them, even if they think it's good, they can't necessarily devote staff for it. So there are people who come to self-publishing because they've tried for 2 or 3 years to be picked up by a publisher and they just can't, but they still believe that their materials are good.
Yeah.
If you're unsure about whether your materials are good, I think that the best thing to do is to give them to some teachers to trial. If you went to a Facebook group of, and there are huge Facebook groups of teachers all around the world, and you said, here is a free lesson on X. I'd be happy for somebody to try this out in class and give me some feedback. That's why I'm offering it to you for free. And that way you would know that your work could be picked up and used by somebody else.
I would also, I'm not meaning to plug your course too much here. I wasn't intending to, but what a forum that is of a dozen or so teachers who are all on the same track. And we have this forum going on throughout the week where everybody's giving opinions back and forth to each other, answering questions. And again, it seems like
sort of like writers groups sometimes where you're critique each other's things and say, I made these 3 covers, which one do you like best? And everyone has an opinion.
So you've got people thinking, because we got 2 more questions that have just jumped in. Somebody asking, do you have any suggestion whether it's necessary to set up as a separate legal entity or small company or LLC, or just declare additional income and expenses? And obviously this depends on your country and context.
I think that depends so much on where you live and what your personal situation is. I would go and sit down, pay a tax person in your city to talk to you for an hour or 2 about all the implications. I did that first when I left my job at Cambridge University Press and went freelance. And I knew that I would still be writing and editing, but did I want to be an LLC? Did I want to be a corporation? Did I want to be nothing? But we looked at a couple years of my past tax returns. We talked about my guesses about how much I might make in the future, my family, that I have a husband and a son, and the husband earns this much and the son is this age. And based on all of that, he made a recommendation for me.
Wonderful.
But nobody on, certainly not me, but even more knowledgeable people about taxes than me on the internet do not know your situation and your local laws. I mean, I have federal taxes, state taxes, and local taxes that I have to be aware of. But absolutely, it's worth paying. I paid a guy for 2 hours of his time, and we went through all that, and then I could make those decisions going forward.
Good. The last one that's here right now is Amazon, the main platform where you generate your ebook sales from. But how is it, number one? And number two, how about a personal website or other retailers? What strategy works best for you?
So Amazon is still the bulk of my income. whether love them or hate them, they have the lion's share of the book market. Amazon will offer you all kinds of incentives to keep your ebooks exclusively with them.
Oh.
And that I do not do, especially in ELT when I have customers all over the world. Not everybody has access to Amazon. Not everybody has access to a credit card.
Yeah.
So I publish everywhere I can. I'm on Google Play, I'm on Apple, I'm on Barnes and Noble, I'm on Kobo, I'm in libraries. And once I had, like with the little graded readers, when I had 2 or 3 graded readers, nobody bought those. Once I had 20, I now see libraries come in and scoop up the whole collection at once. And it's really cool to see, oh, the American Center in Cairo has just picked up all my graded readers. So there are distributors. I think the main one is Draft to Digital, with the number 2. Formerly, you might still see, if you look online, people referring to Smashwords, but now that Draft to Digital has merged with Smashwords, you only need to remember Draft to Digital. They will, for a cut, they take 10% of your profits. They will distribute out to all kinds of places that you might not even have heard of, Tolino and Viblio, and they hit the libraries. So, and the library distribution platforms. So there are people who go direct to Kobo and direct to Google Play and direct to Apple and whatnot. And then there are people who hit those through distributors. I'm kind of half and half. The ones that are easy to deal with, I upload directly. I find Google Play ridiculously easy. Apple is notoriously fiddly. I just let Draft to Digital distribute out to Apple for me, and I don't worry about it. But I do like having my eggs in many, many, many baskets, just because it's also important to me which buyers I reach.
Yeah. Yeah. And Phil has just shared that link, which is just www.draft2digital with the number 2, as Dorothy said, .com. If you want to check it out. Again, when you go there and you're a little overwhelmed with everything, why not come and spend 5 weeks with Dorothy Zemach, who's going to just walk you through and answer all these questions. That's an easier way to do it if you're really interested in getting into the self-publishing.
But and Draft to Digital is super nice. They offer formatting, so you can upload a Word document. They'll help you format it into an EPUB. They've just expanded into paperback distribution. So, you know, there's most people go directly to Amazon, again, just because it is the biggest, and so you don't want to give away 10% of your biggest. But also, it's pretty easy. Amazon is pretty straightforward to upload an EPUB and upload a cover and fill out some fields, and off you go to publish, and it's free.
Cool.
So your expenses will be in creating a good-looking book and paying an editor and making sure your materials are tight. But to actually open an account at any of these places and publish at any of the places is free. That's not a bad deal.
Not a bad deal at all. I know you mentioned I've used Fiverr before, looking for independent cover designers and things. Are there a whole bunch of those kinds of companies, or where does Fiverr fit in the realm of things?
Fiverr's a little cheaper. But if you honestly, if you went to your favorite search engine and typed in independent book covers or book cover services, so many companies would come up. And there are people who charge sort of $75 to $100. There are people who charge $600 to $1,000. That's more for, fiction of for people who are sure they're going to sell. But you can probably get a good cover for $100 or less, especially if you're doing nonfiction, which is simpler.
Yeah.
I'm doing more things with, this is basically an image and a font, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And some decisions. But yeah, I've used Fiverr. I've used Fiverr surprisingly for some audio narrators, and I found some really good people on there. For audio that I didn't intend to sell, that I was putting onto X-Reading or readable platforms for my graded readers, and there were some very good narrators there who I thought did a wonderful job with my books.
Good. I'm just going to ask Phil, we're coming up on 45 minutes into this, and I'm thinking that we might not have enough time to actually bring people into Zoom right now, and we might be coming up to a somewhat wrap up point. Anything on your end going on, Phil?
I'm just rechecking the comments. I think we've answered most of the questions that, if not all of them, actually.
Yep.
And I'm just having a double check to make sure that I haven't missed anything.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say to anybody in the audience or anybody seeing this afterwards, we don't just drop this recording and leave town. We'll be there, and over the when is this course beginning, Dorothy? July? Was it July?
July 1st for me and July 2nd for you. I think it
There we
depends
go.
what side of the
Yep.
international
Okay.
dateline you're.
Yep. And
You're
so there's still a couple of weeks. If you want to ask questions in the Facebook thread, or if you want to send any messages to itdi.pro.
One thing I do want to say about that course, even though we have made it a week longer, it's a pretty full, intense course, and we start kind of right from the beginning working with material. So
Yes.
I do ask that people already have a project in mind and have something written. I don't care if it's one unit, I don't care if it's 2 pages, but you need something written down that you
Yep.
can practice formatting.
Yep.
So they're just, I think the first time I taught the course,
Yep.
week 1 was, let's think about an interesting project. But there isn't time in a month
Yep.
to think about an interesting project and then write your project and still do everything else.
And
So if you
everybody
don't
was,
have a project in mind now, then I'll see you in 2024 when you're ready.
yeah. I remember that clearly, how people were, fluttering about trying to come up with something, and they just fell behind. And it was so much better the second year when people brought something and had
that they were ready to start. And your book, it doesn't have to be finished,
Yeah.
right? But it does, you need the idea and to have something that you can work with. And
Yeah.
also if somebody has a dream in mind that I think is really not suited to self-publishing, someone says, it's my book of poetry, but it has to be coordinated with this sound file of my sister singing it, then I could say, I don't know how to make that happen.
Yeah.
So if I think your project is something I can't help you with, or is unworkable, at least with my knowledge, then I want you to know before you pay for a
Yes.
course, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're all looking forward to it. Another 5 weeks in July. And,
July worked out perfectly this time, that it actually has 5 weeks.
Yes. Phil,
Thank you.
everything's cool on the chat side?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm just going to say thank you very much for everybody who's contributed to the chat, including a number of people who've said they've also signed up for the course. So they're looking forward to joining us in July, and we're absolutely delighted to have you. And thank you so much, Dorothy, for coming in today, talking about your course and answering questions. And I just wanted to say, we have done interviews with you about your course in the past. And what I find is that every year that we do this, there's always new things that come up and new things.
Well, the landscape is always changing, right?
Well, it's the teacher trainer in you as well. You just communicate this stuff so clearly and with your own passion for this self-publishing that, it's a wonderful opportunity for people to spend time with you.
I absolutely believe in it. I don't see myself stopping anytime soon.
Okay, everybody. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I usually go to bed right after this session at night, but it's only just 1 o'clock here in Japan. So I think I'm gonna go out and work in the garden. So thank you, everybody. And we'll see you if you join the course, or see if you ask any questions, follow-up questions on our Facebook thread.
Yeah. And I'm happy to answer questions in the Facebook group. If somebody has a question directly for me, I'm happy to answer that.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Brilliant. And yes, there is a dedicated Facebook group. We've included the link in the description for this live, and I'll post it again in the chat just in case.
Thank you, Phil. As always, you make things happen. I appreciate it.
It's always a good team to work with. All right. Thank you so much.
Cheers, everybody.
Have a good day, everyone, or good evening, and good night.
Bye-bye.